Okay, seventh graders, welcome to our first notes video session. And this is actually take 2 of the video, so I would warn you, if you have a new journal, to go ahead and open that journal and make sure that the first pages are not stuck together, because I had a problem with that on my first attempt to the video. So if you can easily turn your pages and they're not tearing out, then you are ready to go. If they are tearing out, then you need to tear out as many as you need so your pages turn easily. Now, the first thing that I would like for you to do on the front of your journal is to write your name and your class period. You could write math on your journal. I wrote 7th grade because I will have a 7th and an 8th grade folder. The second thing that I'm going to ask you to do is to take your table of contents page, which will look like this right now as you're receiving it. Yours does say Unit 1 on it, and we are starting with Unit 1. So what you are going to do is you are going to cut along the dotted line. See that I'm only cutting along the dotted line, and I am not cutting off the tab. I need to cut around the tab. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and trim this page that I had to actually, that accidentally tore out when I was creating the first video. So I am going to still use this page. It's still good, but I am going to cut out around it so I can show you and go ahead and glue it into my journal correctly. So I'm cutting around the dotted line, and I'm also cutting around the tab that has the unit on it. I do not want to cut that off. Now, the next thing that I would like for you to do is to take a piece of tape. It only takes a little bit, a small piece of tape, about this long. And so what I'd like for you to do is to go ahead and reinforce your Unit 1 tab. You can do it across this way. You can do it around the other way, either way you would like. We just want to go ahead and put a little bit of reinforcement on that tab because it will get some wear and tear as the year goes on. I think if you were to go ahead and have it folded all the way back, where you get some reinforcement on the back also. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is you're going to glue this in to the first page of your journal. Now, when you glue it down, you do want to make sure that your tab is standing out, that it comes to the outside of the journal. Now, when you put your glue on your paper, it doesn't take a whole lot of glue. You don't have to cover the whole page in glue. I do try to reinforce the corners just a little bit, and then I draw one line in between them. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just drawing a line around the edge. Now, when I get to the tab, I'm going to stop because I don't want any glue on the back of that tab. Things will stick. And as the glue dries, of course, this color disappears. You guys know that. And just a couple of lines along the back. There is no reason to cover the whole page in glue. If it starts to come off later in the year, we can glue it again. Make sure that you do it pretty flush to the top of the page. That's the only thing that I would say, is to make sure that your tab is close to the top right corner as it can be. That way, as we go along in the year and we change the units, those tabs will fall in place. So as soon as we do that, I want you to write in your journal on the first line, adding and subtracting fractions. Okay, add and subtract fractions without, that's a W/0, without common, and I just abbreviated COMM, denominators, DENOM. Okay, so that's the first lesson that's going to be in our book. Adding and subtracting fractions without common denominators. We are going to put that on page 1. So I'm going to turn my journal page over, and I'm going to go to the back page because I am going to call that to the back of the first page, and I am going to label that with a 1. This will be page 1. of the first unit, because in each unit we are going to start our page numbers over again. I think it will be easiest for our purposes. So for this lesson, we are going to be adding and subtracting fractions without common denominators. So I'm going to write that again. It is important to label everything that we're doing. Adding and subtracting fractions. And I'm going to do my without abbreviation again, common, and I'm going to write it out this time because I have a little more space, denominators. Now, we all understand that the numerator is the top number of a fraction and the denominator is the bottom number of a fraction. And we also understand that when we add and subtract fractions with common denominators, that we will add only the numerators or subtract only the numerators, and the denominators will stay the same. We will practice that, but we won't have notes on it. So we are having notes on without common denominators. So our example is going to be 3/7 plus 2/5. Okay, 3/7 plus 2/5. So our question remains, what would that be? So what we need to solve is, so we're going to have, this is our question, we need a least common multiple. So you need to write that in your notes, and of course you can pause or back up at any time that you need to. We need a least common multiple. We are going to write that out. It might not be a term that everybody is familiar with. Least common multiple. Now, the easiest way for you to find that is for you to list the multiples of the denominators until you find a number that they have in common. So that's what we're going to do now. And I'm going to start and I'm going to look, my choices are between 7 and 5 because those are both my denominators. 3 and 2 are my numerators. 7 and 5 are my denominators. So between 7 and 5. So I'm going to start with 7 and I'm going to say 7 times 1 equals 7. 5 times 1 equals 5. I'm looking for the number that is the same. When I have a number that I get to that's the same, then I'm able. So I think it's a little bit easier and my brain works. 7 times 2 is 14. 7 times 3 is 21. 7 times 4 is 28. And 7 times 5 is 35. Now, one sure rule on least common multiple is always going to be if you multiply the two denominators together, you will find a multiple. It might not, a common multiple. It might not be the least number, but it will be a common multiple and it will work. But we also would like to look for a least common multiple. So I'm going to stop at 7 times 5 and I'm going to go ahead and do my 5s. Now if I need to continue on over here I can if I don't find one that matches. So 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 3 is 15. And so I'm looking over here. Do I have a 5? No. Do I have a 10? No. Do I have a 15? No. I need to keep going. 5 times 4 is 20. No 20. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 6 is 30. And 5 times 7 is 35. Now I have a number that I have in common. It's the first number that they have in common. That is the least common multiple. So now I need to go back to my question. So my question is, well, I need to go back to the two numbers that are in my problem. So my first one is 3/7. So I'm going to look here, I'm going to write down 3/7, and I need to write an equivalent fraction that is equal to. So what I need to do is I need to multiply the top, the numerator, and the bottom, the denominator, both by the same number. Well, to get to 35, I have to multiply by 5. So I'm going to put times 5 times 5. 3 times 5 is 15, and 7 times 5 is 35. I have made an equivalent fraction of 15/35. Okay, so now I'm going to come over here to my second number, and that's going to be 2/5. So I write down 2/5 is equal to. Now to get to 35, I know I have to multiply by 7. So I'm going to do times 7 times 7. 2 times 7 is 14, and 5 times 7 is 35. So now I have a new problem of 15/35 plus 14/35. Notice now that I do have common denominators. So I'm going to go to the side over here, and I need to add 15 and 14. So I'm going to do that as my scratch work. 15 plus 14. 5 plus 4 is 9, and 1 plus 1 is 2. So my answer, my numerator, will be 29, and my denominator will stay the same. So my answer is 29/35. Thank you.